Hello, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic, where as usual at the weekend I try and take a look at the diabolical Sudoku published by the Daily Telegraph on Fridays. And this is somewhat serendipitous because this is how far you can get without using anything terribly clever in terms of technique. And what I've done on screen there is to fill in all the cells that can only contain two numbers, so all of the doubles. And those of you who've been following Cracking the Cryptic channel will know over the last few days we've done a few videos looking at finned X-Wings, and in fact our most recent video is about the Sashimi finned X-Wing. And what do you know? This puzzle features exactly that technique. So when you arrive at this position, you have the opportunity to put into practice exactly what we've been talking about. So the important thing now is to have a look at the grid, pause if you need to, and see if you can work out how to use this Sashimi finned X-Wing technique to make progress from this position. And I will now talk about how to do that. So the critical thing is to have a look at where nines can be arranged. And let's take a look first at where you can place a 9 in row 7. You can see there are just two positions left, this one and this one, that can take a 9. Now, if we also take a look now at row 3, you can see we have a 9 in a corresponding column here. And there are only two other cells open. And the combinations, what's that going to be? 5, 6, and 9, 5, 6, and 9 for these two squares. But in a sense, we don't even have to look at this. Once we've got three corners of our X-Wing here, we know that we're starting to be in very interesting territory in terms of eliminating this 9 up here. And let's remind ourselves why that's true. Ordinarily with an X-Wing, of course, we'd be looking at this square here. We'd need four corners in order to create the full X. However, in these finned X-Wing variations, it's actually not necessary. And in the extreme Sashimi finned X-Wing, you can even have another digit placed where the 9 would ordinarily be going in order, and that it's still the logic holds. So let's ask ourselves the right questions. Firstly, what happens if this square is a 9? Well, if this square is a 9, obviously we can remove the 9 from up here. We'd be left with a 5, and we'd be home and hosed again. So if this fin is true, we're okay. If this fin is a 9, exactly the same logic. We'd be able to remove the 9 from up here. So the really interesting question is, well, what happens if neither of these fins is a 9? If neither of these cells contain a 9, what happens? Well, if we look at row 3, there's only one place a 9 can go now, and that's here. So this square would have to be a 9. Similarly, floating down the grid to row 7, we now know this cell cannot be a 9, but there are only two possible positions a 9 could go in row 7, either here or here. So if it's not here, this square would have to be a 9. So here we have the classic sort of start of the X-Wing. We're not actually interested in what goes in the other corners here. All we need to know is that this would be forced to be a 9 if either of these fins is not a 9. And you can see immediately that's going to allow us to make the very same deduction in terms of whether a 9 can go in this square. I mean, so this was really very lucky to have this crop up as a real solution to a live puzzle. It is great, and it shows you that these esoteric techniques, they do come up, and this one I think is not too difficult. You just have to look out for these three corners of the X-Wing, and then ask yourself the right questions about this fourth corner and any potential fins. So and you can see, I think, quickly here as well that if you do spot this technique, it completely finishes the puzzle, because once we know this square here cannot contain a 9, we know it has to be a 5. And you can see that that's really very helpful in terms of finishing off the puzzle. Everything chains from, well, everything would chain if I could point the mouse to the correct place. So thank you for watching. If you enjoy the content, please subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate that. And if you have any puzzles you'd like to see us solve on the channel, then do send them. Our Twitter account is @crypticcracking, and our Gmail account is crackingthecryptic@gmail.com. So just send the puzzles over, and if we do have time, we'll try and do a video and show you how to do them. Thanks for watching. We'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.